Afternoon, everybody. I am Cappy Powell, President of the Johann Fust Library Foundation Board. On behalf of our entire board and our foundation staff, welcome to our 2024 benefit, our only fundraising event. The mission of the foundation is to maintain and preserve the buildings and gardens of the library and to provide a literary and cultural center for the residents and visitors of Boca Grande. Thank you to our major sponsors for today's program, the Gulf Coast Community Foundation, Northern Trust, Terry Dunaway, Linda Fairstein, and Michael Goldberg, and to all our donors, especially those of you who are here with us today. Your support helps us fulfill that mission. The Johann Fust Library has been at the core of the Boca Grande community for decades. And now, after 74 years, we would like to share some of its rich history with the community. For the first time, the foundation will offer docent-guided tours of our buildings and grounds. We have a dedicated group of volunteers who have been meeting weekly for months, researching and organizing information to share with you. The slides we have been showing give you a quick glimpse of what you will see on their tour. They will be every week, February, March, and April. They last about 45 minutes. Please go to our webpage or call the office to sign up. You will be amazed what you learn about the Island Library building and its history. Last year, as our program committee started the planning for our 2023-24 season, we were coming out of the COVID years, and we were cleaning up from the destruction of Hurricane Ian. If it's true that laughter is the best medicine, then who better to ask to be our benefit speaker than Dave Barry? And then we discovered that he had a new book coming out, Swamp Story, which was published last spring. And there are some additional copies available if you didn't get one when you came in. Dave grew up in New York, then moved to Westchester, Pennsylvania, where he wrote a humor column for the Daily News. And as we all know, he ended up in Miami at the Miami Herald, where his syndicated column ran in over 500 newspapers. He won a Pulitzer Prize for those columns, and they were the inspiration for the CBS sitcom, Dave's World. And as we learned from last year's benefit speaker, Scott Turow, he and Dave and some other authors are in a rock band called Rock Bottom Remainders. I hope we hear more about that. Another member of that band is Ridley Pearson, who with Dave wrote young adult novels, one of which became a Broadway play, Peter and the Starcatcher. He has written many hilarious fiction and nonfiction books, but for one of those, a few years ago, Dave took a tour of his adopted state, to research a book called Best State Ever. A Florida man defends his home state. The idea for this book was prompted by the numerous calls from media types wanting to know, what the hell is wrong with Florida? This research took him around the state where, among other things, he hobnobbed with mermaids, watched alligators wrestle, hunted for the legendary skunk ape, went to a gun gallery where they actually let him shoot machine guns. He went to a clothing-optional bar in Key West, and he spent a couple nights at the Villages. But if he came to Boca Grande while he was researching Best State Ever, he doesn't mention it in the book. Maybe we weren't funny enough. Too boring. Dave starts Best State Ever with a brief history of Florida, and one paragraph caught my attention. Most of you know me, or you know my husband Peter, and you will see why. Page 35. In time, the population of Florida started to grow. Probably, scientists now believe, as a result of people having sex with each other. Eventually, these indigenous people spread out across Florida and formed Native American tribes, including the Tequestas, Mohegans, Cheyennes, Seminoles, Gators, Presbyterians, and Kansas City Chiefs. And that was written 7 years before Taylor Swift became a member of the Chiefs Kingdom. Dave, this auditorium and our overflow rooms are filled with people just like you who grew up somewhere else and moved to Florida. But for all of us, Boca Grande is the best community ever, and we are delighted to welcome you to our village.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for coming, and it's nice to be here at the Johann Fust Library. I'll be honest, I'd never heard of Johann Fust, so when I knew I was going to be speaking here, I did a little poking around on the internet. And you know what I found out? There's a lot of pornography on the internet. You should check it out. But also, I found out Johann Fust was a 15th century German printer. So did he retire here? Is he here tonight? This seems like roughly the demographic. I'm kidding. I am also of your demographic. I'm 76 years old. But you know, they say 76 is the new 74. And there's some good things about being old, I think. The main one, well, two, okay? First, you have a sense of perspective that you didn't have when you were younger. Like when people say now that the planet is in trouble, and if we don't take better care of it, it'll be uninhabitable in 25 years. If you're a young person, you think, well, that's bad. But if you're my age, you think, 25 years, I can live with that. And the other good thing, I think, is grandchildren. I think those of us who have grandchildren, it's a wonderful thing. I have two. And I love having them and playing with them. The only thing is, they do want to play with you, and that's great. The bad thing is where they want to play with you, which is the floor. And when you're 76, the floor is like North Korea. You don't go there on the spur of the moment, you know. I think everything else about getting this age is bad. I mean, I hate my mail. I get all these letters from ARP. ARP is, of course, the last sound you make before you die. You know, ARP. You know, every doctor is ARPing over here. I don't like that. I don't like what happens to your memory. Your memory, like especially the names. You know, like you're making a point to some group of people, and you get to a name. And you go, and even that hurts because you have arthritis. You go, you know, the guy in the place with the thing. And it starts this game of charades. And 20 minutes later, they figure out that you mean Hitler. But you can't remember what you were trying to say about Hitler. So that's bad. Most of it's bad, I'll be honest. Anyway, a little bit more about me. I am a fellow Florida. I live in Miami. Moved there in 1986 from the United States. And my wife is Cuban Jewish, Juban. That's what they call themselves. They didn't come on rafts. They parted the Caribbean. So I'm very much part of the Miami community. In Miami, I'm a defender. It gets a bad reputation. Miami. People on this side of the state don't want to go there. They think it's dangerous and violent. And like when we hear that, we want to track these people down and kill them. It's really not as bad as it used to be. We have a new attitude over there, new tourism promotion slogan. Come back to Miami. We weren't shooting at you. There are a lot of differences between Miami and Boca Grande. Like, for one thing, you're all here gathered listening to me, and in Miami, everybody's just waking up. Right? But there are a lot of similarities. There's a lot of common ground between Miami and Boca Grande. You have a warm climate. We have a warm climate. We have the Atlantic Ocean. You have the Gulf of Mexico. We have a rich cultural diversity population. You have the Gulf of Mexico. About another one coming in. We have cocaine. You have croquet out there. Like, so anyway. But I'm also a defender of Florida. We're all Floridians, and Florida. It's kind of like Miami. Florida also has a bad reputation these days. We are kind of the butt of a lot of jokes. This state. It started in the year 2000. That's really what you can trace our joke status to. the 2000 presidential election. I don't know how many of you were here then, but it was not good. All the other states were able to figure out whom they had voted for using arithmetic. But that eluded the state of Florida, and it turned out it was very important. This was the Bush-Gore election. Our state was going to determine the ultimate winner. And so during the night, the networks went crazy. At first they called it for Bush, then they called it for Gore, then they called it for Bush again. Then at one point around dawn, William Shatner took the lead. We didn't know. And then they had, those guys, elections officials in Palm Beach County holding up these ballots that looked like they'd been attacked by weasels, and it was just a nightmare. And then from then on, we were the idiot state. And it never went away, that stigma. The premise that Floridians are stupider than everybody else, that we do stupider things down here than anybody else, that we're all over them. And it's brutal, and it goes on and on. This whole Florida man thing, every time anybody does anything stupid down here, makes national news. Florida man did it. It's unfair, I think. First of all, there are 21 million people in this state. 21 million. Is it fair to judge 21 million people because of the actions of 19 million people? And the other thing is, it's not really us much of the time, and I'll explain what I mean by way of an anecdote, and it's a true story. And you may have heard it when it happened because it was international news. You talk about viral, this story was viral. It began in the Florida Keys, and there was a Florida State Highway Patrol trooper who stopped a car. There was an accident, and the trooper responded, wrote a very detailed report of this accident, and that report became international news. We ran it at the Miami Herald, where I work, and then went all over the world. But what happened was this. So, and again, this is all in the Florida Highway Patrol report. Woman was driving south on the overseas highway trying to get to Key West. She was in a hurry to get to Key West to see her boyfriend down there. And she wanted to look good for him, so she decided to shave her bikini region. Now, some people would pull over to the side of the road. But she was in a hurry. And again, this is all in the trooper's report. She was in a hurry, so she decided to keep driving but outsource the steering of the car while she was shaving to her passenger, who was, and this is one of the things that made this a big viral story, her ex-husband. All true. So they're going south about 40 miles an hour. The woman is operating the accelerator but not looking at the road because she's shaving her bikini region. Her ex-husband is steering the car from the passenger side. What could possibly go wrong? Car in front of them slowed to make a turn, and they slammed into it 40 miles an hour. That was the accident. The trooper responded to, wrote this detailed report, ran in the newspaper, and then went all over the world. Every FM DJ talked about it, every late night talk show, every newspaper, all over the world. And Florida got the blame. Everybody who read that said, God, these idiots in Florida. You read about this moron woman in Florida, these Floridians, these moron, idiot Floridians. That woman was from Indiana. She was shaving her Hoosier, okay? You were wondering. You always wondered what that expression. But we get the blame, and that's the problem. People come here to do we are like the Ellis Island for weird, stupid people, and we get the blame for it. But anyway, as I say, I love it here. I wouldn't live anywhere else. The only time I don't like it here is hurricane season, which runs from June through the following June. I know you all are familiar with hurricane season, know what it's like. We all kind of go through this ritual that non-Floridians have trouble understanding, where they show the radar blob, and it's out by Africa somewhere, but they're just showing it to you over and over again. All the places it might go. Could go here, could go to Australia. They don't know where it's going to go. But they keep showing it to you, and you start to get more and more nervous, and the blob is moving a little bit every day. And it's probably not coming here, but they keep talking about the blob. And that, like the hurricane winds, they can do terrible things, take a harmless object and turn it into a deadly missile. Interesting fact is hurricane winds will turn it, if you have a deadly missile, it will turn it into a harmless object. A lot of people don't know that. But anyway, so it's coming. coming, it's coming. It's probably not coming here, but you keep watching it every day. If you're in Florida, you're always aware of where that blob is. It gets closer, 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 closer. And finally, you have to go to Publix. We all do it. We go there and we just buy random crap, you know. You come home with things you don't need. You come home with 9-volt batteries in your spouse. We don't have anything that uses 9-volt batteries. That's all they had, you know. Everybody else got the good batteries, you know. And you buy food. You buy emergency food. Everybody buys a whole lot of emergency food. And then you eat it before the hurricane gets here because you're so bored waiting for the hurricane. The idea there is that you will gain so much weight that the wind will not be able to turn you into a deadly object. Anyway. The worst, I mean, I know you guys got hit by Ian. We've been hit by, it's, to me, the worst part of hurricanes is not when you lose your power, although that's pretty awful, being without power. It's when your neighbor gets power back and you don't. That, to me, is the single worst part of the hurricane. So my feeling is if like 2 days go by and you don't have power and your neighbor does, they should send an emergency crew around to take their power away. A revenge crew, it would be called. But anyway, so I've been through, the worst hurricane I was through was Andrew, 1992, which went directly over what was my house. And no fun. I know you guys went through Ian, you know, no fun. One amusing element that came out of that for me involved my dogs. At the time of Hurricane Andrew, I had 2 dogs. I had a large Maine dog named Ernest and a small emergency backup dog named Zippy. No, you should have 2 dogs in case your main dog goes down in the hurricane. So anyway, prior to Hurricane Andrew, I let Ernest and Zippy out every morning via a 2-stage procedure. And if you've ever had a dog, you know that going out in the morning is a very big deal. The dog gets very excited. Dog can't believe you thought of it, even though you do it every single day. And then, like, whoa, that's a great idea. We'll go out, you know. So anyway, with Ernest and Zippy, it was a 2-stage procedure. I would open up the back door, and then we had a patio with a screen enclosure, which you need down here to keep the mosquitoes from stealing your patio furniture. Open the back door. They would run across the patio to the screen door, and then I would wait for me. They're very eager, and I go and open the screen door, and they would run out into the yard. So that was the procedure. Did every day for years. Back door, screen door, yard. And Ernest and Zippy learned that the way dogs learn a procedure. So anyway, comes Hurricane Andrew, and the screen enclosure is orbiting the Earth. It's gone. But the screen door was still there. Just a door with nothing around it but yard. It was about a 2-week learning curve. I swear to you, I would open the back door and Ernest and Zippy would run to the screen door and wait for me to open it because that was the procedure, which is why I believe the least realistic television program ever made was Lassie. Because the premise of Lassie was you have this brilliant collie dog living, as it happens, on a farm with this unbelievably stupid farm family. People are so stupid they never leave the kitchen. Always just looking out the window going, how come all the neighbors have crops? And it was a good thing they didn't go out, because if they did, they got into some life-threatening danger, especially the little boy, little Jeff, who later became little Timmy, and they didn't even notice that. That's how stupid these people were. He would go out and fall into the quicksand, or sometimes the well, but more often than not, the quicksand. Like every week, who the hell buys a farm with that much quicksand on it, you know? So typical every episode of Lassie, same plot, Jeff/Timmy sinking in the quicksand. Lassie goes racing back to the house, very agitated. Every week this happens. A family of normal intelligence would at some point figure, they go, little morons in the quicksand again. But not the Lassie family. They would go, what's wrong, girl? Are you hungry? Now a real dog would go, yeah. I'm hungry. I'm always hungry. She'd come in, she'd eat, spend the rest of the evening licking herself. She'd forget all about Jeff/Timmy. By the end of that episode, he's bubbles in the quicksand, right? Tune in next week, they get a new little boy named Billy, you know. The Lassie would make them go rescue him every time. They come back to the house, they'd gather around the kitchen table, everybody's happy. Lassie's in the corner filling out the agricultural subsidy forms. So, anyway. I do like Florida, despite that. So what do? I'm a humor writer, which means what I do for a living, I sit around in my underwear and make things up. It's a lot like being a consultant. No, okay, a consultant would be wearing your underwear, but I try to think of things to write about, and it just pretty much anything that I can get away with writing a column about, I will. It was hard on my children that I did that for so many years. If you're a humor writer, your children suffer for it. Because it's embarrassing. Everybody who's had kids, especially when you get to be adolescents, even if you're a really cool dad, you still become embarrassing at some point. I was really embarrassing to my children. Probably the single low point where my column took precedence over my child's psychological well-being was when my son Rob was in middle school, and I got a call, which is like that's prime age for please stay away from me, Dad. I got a call at the Miami Herald from the Oscar Mayer Corporation, saying they were bringing the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile to Miami. Wienermobile, you're probably familiar with it, giant fiberglass hot dog in a bun with a loudspeaker, sits on a truck body. There are actually 6 Wienermobiles. A lot of people don't know that. This nation leads the world in Wienermobile technology, although Iran is developing one. Anyway, they like to get publicity for the Wienermobile, or they used to do this back in the day. They called me up at the Miami Herald and said, we're bringing the Wienermobile to Miami. Would you like to drive it for a day? And I said, heck yes. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to pick my son up at middle school. Because there he is, he's in peer pressure hell. And I'll never forget the moment Rob came out at the end of the day, and there's all these moms in their minivans, and looming up behind is a really big hot dog with a loudspeaker going, Rob Berry, please report to the Wienermobile. I'll tell you, if a 12-year-old could suffer a heart attack, he would have. And I know you're thinking, Dave, it was a lot of fun for you, but you scarred your child psychologically for life. Yes, but it was worth it. But more often than not, I embarrass my own self. I've gotten in a number of situations because of columns I wrote over the years. You can't always tell what's going to happen when you write a column. It goes out there, and you don't know necessarily what reaction you're going to get. I got into a situation a while back with North Dakota, which is a state. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. And what happened was I was reading the paper one day just looking for something to write a column about, and I came across an article about North Dakota, this big conference they held of tourism and business and political people to try to figure out why people were leaving the state. North Dakota's doing better now because of the energy boom, but it wasn't doing very well then. People were leaving the state, kids would graduate and go away, never come back. And they were trying to figure out how to get people to come there. And they were kicking around ideas. And the one that caught my eye was they discussed changing the name of the state to improve its image. They actually discussed this. They felt that North Dakota was just kind of a joke name. So they were going to change it to Dakota. So it would suddenly be attractive to us, the way Hawaii is, or I think something like that. Well, I thought that was really stupid. So I wrote a column making fun of North Dakota. If you don't learn anything else from me this afternoon, and you will not, learn this. Do not make fun of North Dakota, okay? First of all, I got an angry letter from everybody in the state, which is like nearly 115 letters. But the really fiendish part of the North Dakota revenge scheme, they invited me up there in January and dedicated a sewage lifting station in my honor. This is really true. If you go to Grand Forks, North Dakota for any reason, such as your plane has crashed there, there is a brick building, and on it, in foot-high letters, it says Dave Barry Lift Station number 16. Seriously, it's like a little bit of a tourist attraction, I'll be honest. So anyway, I flew up there for the big unveiling of the sewage lifting station, and it was cold. It's the coldest by far I have ever been in my life. It was way below zero. But an actual crowd of people showed up for this unveiling, and they put a piece of paper, brown paper, over the sign, and there's this big building, and inside is the equipment that lifts the sewage, which is a concept I do not understand. I would leave the sewage down there, but In North Dakota, they lift it. That's how bored they are. But anyway, they had this ceremony, and the mayor of Grand Forks read a proclamation very eloquently comparing my work to the production of human excrement. And at the big moment, they had me tear the piece of paper down, and I remember standing here, seeing my name in gleaming silver letters on the side of this building, and smelling the sewage in the cold North Dakota air, and hearing whoop, 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 which is the sound of people applauding in mittens. So mostly that's what I do. I write humor. I have over the years done columns about real news events. I've gone to the conventions. I've gone on the campaign trail, and written columns about it. But I am often reminded how bad I was at that kind of journalism, where you have to talk to people, and they can be intimidating, important people. Sometimes people don't really want to talk to you. Journalists do that all the time, but I was always bad at it, which is why I just prefer to make things up. But I'll give you an example of my embarrassing myself, involving a person who I understand used to regularly visit here, the late Barbara Bush. What happened was in 1992, her husband, George Bush, and she were in New Hampshire campaigning. He was campaigning for president, and I had to come up with a column every day, so I decided one day to spend a day following then First Lady Barbara Bush around New Hampshire and in the press corps with her. And she was on her own, but she had big press corps and her staff, and we're in the motorcade zipping all around New Hampshire, and Mrs. Bush would go to all these rallies and make a little speech. And it was fine, and I'm just I'm not part of that press corps really. I'm sitting in the back of the bus taking notes for my humor column, perfectly happy going around New Hampshire. At the end of the day, there's a big rally at a big hotel in Nashua, New Hampshire. And Mrs. Bush does her thing. The place is packed. Everybody's cheering. At the end of the day, at the end of the rally, the press person for Mrs. Bush summoned us, the press corps, with a couple dozen of us who'd been all that day with Mrs. Bush, onto the stage for a photograph with her. I'm not sure exactly why, but suddenly I go from I'm lurking in the background to I'm on a stage with bright lights shining with thousands of people, and I'm standing, as it happens, right next to Barbara Bush, the First Lady of the United States, who has no idea who I am, of course. And that's a situation where I know in my mind to say nothing. Just smile. You're honored to be there, but don't make a fool of yourself. I knew that in my mind. But you know how your brain doesn't always alert the rest of the body as to the plan? And I don't know if you've ever done this, just out of sheer nervousness, I blurt out a statement. It's who is saying this? I said to her in a loud, cheerful, perky voice, "I shop at the same supermarket as your son, Jeb." Just out of nowhere, my brain ejected that. And it was true at the time. Jeb Bush, before he became governor, shopped at the same Publix on South Dixie Highway. But I don't think she was dying to know that. I don't think she's standing there thinking, I wonder if this completely unknown to me individual shops at the same supermarket with anybody in my immediate family. But I informed her of that fascinating fact, and she goes, "Well, who gives a shit?" Not with her mouth, with her eyes. With her eyes. No, with her mouth, she said, "Oh, we just celebrated Jeb's 39th birthday." Perfectly nice thing to say. What she was doing, and it was clear immediately to me what she was taking this incredibly awkward moment that I had created and diffusing it. Obviously, she's very good at that. She's done this a million times. People are intimidated by her and whatever. Some of you know her probably. She was a very folksy, down-to-earth, funny person, and she was just diffusing the situation. And I knew that's what she was doing at the time. I'm thinking, "Oh my God, I can't believe I said that. Thank you, Mrs. Bush, for making it appear that we're having a conversation, even though there's no way we could have a conversation about the fact that I shop at the same." But anyway, thank you, Mrs. Bush, is what I'm thinking with my brain. Then I look down and see to my horror that my mouth is thinking, "Whoa, we are really hitting it off here." So I hear myself say to Barbara Bush, following up on the fascinating fact that I shop at the same supermarket as her son Jeb, I said, I swear to you, I said, he's very tall. Again, why? Why would I? But it's true. Jeb Bush was a tall individual, but I'm sure that she was already aware of that fact, you know. So now she's looking around for the guy with the tranquilizer dart gun, you know. And then thank God the photographer took the picture and it was over, except that I had to endure the ridicule of my fellow journalists on the long, long bus ride back to our original hotel, marveling at my interviewing technique, you know. So anyway, that's really why I became a humor writer. I just wasn't any good. But I have gone on the campaign trail a number of times, and I find it to be highly entertaining. I was going to read you something. I thought maybe that Tom Brokaw was going to be here tonight, because I know he lives in this area. And I wrote a column about him, but he's not here. Should I read it anyway? Okay, this is just a little part of it, the column I wrote. Tom and I became friends on the campaign trail. He's a really great guy, as I'm sure those of you know him know, and very down to earth, easy to get to done. I more than one night sat at a bar at some campaign area with Tom having beers, and at least I was having beers. Anyway, he was shooting cocaine, but no. Anyway, this happened at a convention. It was a 2000 convention in New York City, and Tom and the late Tim Russert used to do an MSNBC thing. Like, this is when the conventions were getting smaller and smaller ratings, but they would have a booth and they would talk about what was going on. And I ended up a couple of times being a guest of Tom and Tim, and this happened, and I had to write about it for the next day's newspaper. I want to talk frankly and openly about my relationship with the extremely Reverend Jerry Falwell. I want to get this thing out in the open before the gossip mongers start with their rumor and innuendo, because Reverend Falwell and I have done nothing to be ashamed of. Here's how it happened. On Tuesday night, Reverend Falwell and I were guests in back-to-back segments on MSNBC. That was with Tom and Tim. Reverend Falwell was on the show to talk about gay people, whom, as a Christian, he sincerely and deeply loves, which is why he wants to inform them that they are degenerate perverts going to hell. I have no earthly idea why I was on the show. All I know is that when Reverend Falwell was done with his segment, a technician removed the earpiece from his ear, and with the Reverend standing right next to me, our hips practically touching, the technician inserted the same earpiece, which was still warm, into my ear. Yes, there was penetration. Yes, there was probably an exchange of earwax. No, neither I nor Reverend Falwell, as far as I know, was wearing a condom. But so what? This is the year 2000, darn it. If two consenting male adults choose to share an earpiece, it is nobody else's business. That is my view, and I'm sure the Reverend agrees, although I have not discussed this with him personally. Jerry, if you're reading this, call me, you big lug. Anyway, if anybody sees Tom, please tell him I still cherish that memory, and they've treated the ear. So anyway, so I'm going to talk a little bit about my book. It's called Swamp Story, and I'm not going to tell you to buy it because I think you already had to. I'm sorry, but anyway, it's a novel. It's supposed to be funny, but at least I thought it was funny. And it's about Florida and weird goings on. Nothing that couldn't happen in the state of Florida, in my opinion, except there is a time-traveling chiropractor, and that probably has not happened yet, but it could. It could. Anyway, I spent the last year basically going around talking about this book on a book tour, and book tour is when you go around and you talk about your book with a lot of people who have not read your book, and sometimes you get the feeling you have not read any book. When you do TV thing, and you have to sort of blurt out a lot of information, about your book, trying to make it sound fascinating to somebody who's just reading the next question already, and they want to get you off the show. I had a conversation, and every author who goes on book tours had these awkward experiences. I was at a book event once with the late David McCullough, wonderful historian, and we got to trading stories about situations we've been in on book tours with not great interviewers. And David won. He had the best one. This was in 1978. He was promoting a book called A Path Between the Seas, which is a wonderful book about the building of the Panama Canal. And he was on a morning TV local show somewhere, and being interviewed by a guy who didn't know who he was, didn't know anything about the book, just was reading the questions off the teleprompter. And the question that the guy asked David, because it was an issue at the time, was how did he feel about the United States turning the Panama Canal over to the Republic of Panama? That was an issue at the time. And David's answer was that he said, in a sense, I think the Panama Canal will always be ours, in the same sense that Normandy Beach will always be ours. And he said the guy looked really puzzled and goes, excuse me, but who is Normandy Beach? But you do those shows because you have to. You do whatever you're told to do when you're on a book tour. You become the lowest form of, you'll just sell yourself. You'll do anything. I'll give you a true story in my own case of how low I was willing to sink. I was in St. Louis on a book tour, and I got a call from my publicist saying that an Oprah producer wanted to get in touch with me about going on the show. And of course, the Oprah show was big deal for an author especially. So you want to be on the Oprah show if you can. So I said, sure. And so the publicist calls me, and she says, we're doing a show tomorrow, and it's going to be called Righting Wrongs. And we're going to have a panel. Want to see if you want to be on the panel. The panelists, everybody's going to confess to something that he or she has done wrong, and then make it right there on the air, righting wrongs. So do you have anything you could talk about? I'm racking my brains. And I came up with something, which is this. Some years earlier, I was in a Hyatt hotel, and they had a sign, little plastic tent-shaped sign in the bathroom, and it said, "Our towels are 100% cotton. Should you wish to purchase a set, they are available in the gift store. Should you prefer the set in your bathroom, a $75 charge will automatically be added to your bill." In other words, if you steal these towels, we're going to charge you $75. So I stole the sign. Because I thought it was funny, and I put it in our guest bathroom. And it was there for years, and our guests always enjoyed it. And so I told the Oprah producer, and she said, that's perfect. You'll come on the show, you'll tell that story, and then on the air, you'll return that sign. We're going to have a box. You're going to put the sign in the box, and everybody will see you've righted the wrong. And I'm going, great, I'm going to be on Oprah. The problem was, I was in St. Louis. The Oprah show was the next morning in Chicago, and the sign was in Miami. And I called my wife, there's no way to get it there in time. So I'm thinking, I'm going to lose my chance to go on the Oprah show. And then I realized something. I was in a Hyatt hotel in St. Louis. So I stole another sign. This one just said, I think, no smoking, or, the smoking penalty. But nobody could tell that. So on the air, I pull it out of my pocket and drop it in the thing. I mean, my point here is that in a show about righting wrongs, I was willing to lie and steal again. So I think that is how, anyway. So when I'm not writing, I am, in fact, I'm in a band of authors. And I understand you had Scott Turow here last year. And I have a Scott story that may, I don't know if he told you, but it was certainly definitely seared into my brain, this story. I should explain to Remainders, I don't know, it's a bunch of authors, pretty famous authors, Stephen King and Amy Tan, Ridley Pearson, Roy Blunt Jr., Mitch Albom, I'm leaving names out because blanking, Hitler, no. It's a callback to an earlier job. And, but we're not a good band, okay? Roy Blunt Jr., one of our members, describes our genre as hard listening music. But we have a lot of fun. We enjoy being in the band, and so what I understand some bands do is practice the songs ahead of time. That's their secret. We don't do that. We play a show and then we say, we should have practiced those songs. But then it's too late and we go to the bar. So we spend more time in the bar than we do practicing. But anyway, we had played a show in New York. And after the show, we all went back to the hotel and we're in the bar. And I'm sitting between two of my favorite people in the band, Roy Blunt Jr., who's one of the funniest people alive, Scott Turow, you heard him last year, he's a brilliant man, he's a great guy. I'm sitting between them. And I had too many vodka gimlets. I'm just going to say it. I drank too many vodka. It was not my fault. People were buying them for me, so I had to drink them. But I drank too many of them. So I'm getting a little like, I'm just not really, my brain isn't functioning all that well. But I'm sitting between these two guys, and I'm trying to follow both conversations. Roy is just funny, so I can just tune in, tune out. Everything he says is funny. Scott, though, is telling a very complex story, or not, just describing something involving his spleen. And I'm like trying to follow it, and I would interrupt him. I go, wait a minute, I thought you didn't have a spleen. And he'd go, I don't. That's the point of the story, Dave. Okay. And I'm like, listen to Roy for a little while, come back. Then he confused me again. So, wait a minute, I thought you didn't have. No, I don't. I told you I don't. So the third time I interrupted Scott about the status of his spleen, he's a nice man, but he was fed up. He pulls my sleeve up on my right forearm, takes a Sharpie and writes in big letters on my forearm, no spleen. And that solved the problem for the evening. I could just refer to that. So then the evening ends, everybody goes to bed, and then we got to get up early next morning to take a train to Boston. We were doing a show in Boston. And I was hurting when I got up, not in a good way at all. And I get up and I'm walking through the hotel, and I get to the bathroom mirror and I see letters on my arm, and I look down and my arm says no spleen. And I have no memory of how those words got there. And you know, there's this urban legend that there's this salesman, and he meets an attractive woman at a hotel bar. She slips him a Mickey. He wakes up the next morning in the hotel, in his bathtub, and is packed in ice, and there's a note on him, and it says, "We have harvested your kidney." That's an urban legend. I don't know. I heard that one. So anyway, in that New York bathroom, for just a few horrible, chilling seconds, I'm thinking, oh my God, they've harvested my spleen. But I don't know where to look. I still don't know where my spleen is. But then as my brain starts to reboot, I realized, well, obviously they didn't harvest my spleen. You don't need a spleen. That was the whole point of Scott's story. Like, there's probably an expression in organ harvesting circles. He's so stupid, he would harvest a spleen. Anyway, so that's my Scott Turow story, and the lesson from that is go easy on the vodka gimlets, people. So anyway, probably you don't want to talk about politics, but we're gonna. A little bit, because America is unhappy right now, very unhappy with the choices, the presidential election. Every poll shows us people are not crazy about it. Either case, it's looking like it's going to be Joe Biden versus Donald Trump again. People have problems with both of these men. Joe Biden, he seems like a nice enough man, but he appears to be discovering what's going on as he reads it on the teleprompter. He's like, it's good to be here in Arizona. Oh, China. That's a... and then they hustle them off. So that's one choice. The other one is Donald Trump, who basically is obsessed with the idea that he won the 2020 election. As far as he's concerned, is the most important single issue facing the nation today. I have a solution to that, by the way, which I don't know what the legal mechanism would be, but we get the United States Supreme Court to review the 2020 election. And right before the 2024 election, they declare, Donald Trump, you did in fact win the 2020 election. And you're now done with your second term. Thank you for your service, It's a win-win. But that's probably not going to happen. So, the point is, people are unhappy. They're unhappy with the choices this time around, which is why I'm going to make an announcement, and then I will pause for your spontaneous applause. I'm running for president of the United States. I go. I'm going to tell you where I stand, and I hope I don't offend anybody, but I'm not one of these wishy-washy politicians that has to take a survey to figure out what his positions are. I'm not like that, okay? I speak from the heart. I lay it on the line, take it or leave it, okay? I agree with you. About everything, and if you change your mind, let me know, okay? That's the kind of leadership I will provide. I do have some policies that I think would be effective. The border, big one now, southern border, what to do. Simple solution to that one. We tell the Florida Department of Transportation to go down to the border and fix the roads. Nobody will ever get through again, okay? Foreign affairs. People think, well, what do you know about foreign affairs? I know a little bit about foreign affairs. We right now are basically, geopolitically, we have two main enemies that we don't admit it, but we're kind of in proxy wars with both of them, Russia and China. What would I do about Russia and China? I happen to know a little bit about Russia. I was there in 2014. I was sent over there along with my co-author, Ridley Pearson, by our State Department as part of a program where it was designed, where they'd send authors over there to improve relations between the two countries. We see how that's working out. But we went over there. When we agreed to do it, the State Department sent us this packet of warnings, basically, all the things that could go wrong. And they said, this is after we agreed to do it, they said, you will be under surveillance a lot over there. You're very likely you'll be followed. Your hotel room will be bugged. It may even have a camera in it. Any phone call you make will be listened in on. Any computer you bring over there will be hacked. And you may be hassled on the street. If that happens, here's what you do. All of those things happened to us. I mean, and it was not, the Russian people we got, it was fine, but we did have various things happen to us along the way that made it clear that the State Department wasn't fooling around about that. But it was interesting. We would speak to groups, and sometimes we had to have an interpreter, sometimes they spoke English, but either way, we would try to explain what we do, which was difficult for me because I don't have a lot of people do what I do over in Russia. So I had this little slideshow I would show them, and one of the slides was me in the Wienermobile. There's a picture of me that day, and I'm in the Wienermobile out the window, and Rob, my son, is standing there like this. Oh, like, oh, Jesus. And and they don't have the Wienermobile in Russia. So I would try to explain what's going on, and sometimes through an interpreter, it's getting really more weird. And you can see them looking at this, and they're thinking, how the hell did we lose the Cold War to these? But anyway, my point is I have been to Russia, and I learned one thing. If you ever go to Russia, this is really important. Do not eat the Mexican food. I say this is one night in Moscow. We did an event, and we came back. The hotel restaurant had closed. The only restaurant around was a Mexican restaurant nearby, operated by the Russians, who aren't even that good at Russian food. And I ate what I later determined must have been a weaponized chimichanga. And I'm just going to say, if somebody was listening in on my hotel room that night, that person will need years of therapy. So anyway, but here's my point. My point is I do have some experience with Russia, and here's what I would do if I were the president of the United States. I would be tougher than we are. I wouldn't fight by proxy. I would, and hear me out, I would send bombers over there, Air Force bombers. I would open the doors, and I would drop lawyers. We got them, let's use them. If that didn't work, I would drop more lawyers. If that didn't work, I would put parachutes on the lawyers, okay? Lawyer joke. Education, what would I do about education? It's a disgrace in this country. Our educational system is a disgrace. We spend more per pupil than almost any country in the world, and yet our kids do worse on standardized tests than many, many other countries, many foreign countries, with spending far less money per child and are getting much better test scores for those kids than our kids are getting. I would put the blame where it belongs. If I were the president, I would get these kids out of here and bring in foreign kids who could get the job done. Healthcare, that's a big one. Big one, especially when you're getting to be our age. Here's what I do. I mean, I really don't care what else the medical profession does, but it needs to find a way to get to the prostate gland other than the way it's getting to it now. People say, what do you want, Dave? I'll tell you what men want. We want a procedure where the doctor stands 85 yards away and goes, looks good from here, Dave. Because we hate it. I mean, the guys hate it. The doctor hates it. So that's why they wait to the very end. They're hoping there'll be a nuclear war, and won't have to do that, So my doctor in Miami is named Curtis Hamburger. He's a wonderful guy, great doctor. And the first time we reached that moment, which every guy hates in the exam, and he's putting on the glove, and I've got my pants down, I'm like all tense up. Kurt, this is how he relaxed me in that moment. He's I'm bent over like, he says, Dave, when you should feel really nervous is when you feel both my hands on your shoulders. That is not my joke. That's my doctor's joke. Okay? Well, on that note, on that high note, I'm gonna stop talking and we got a few minutes for questions, which I promised I would take. So, can you, Kyle? This is our sound man, Kyle. Yay, Kyle! Thank you. Kyle is turning up the house lights so I can see you, and they're going to come around with microphones, but I can just tell you because I'm an experienced professional, if you just speak loudly, we can all hear you, and then we won't spend 5 minutes trying to get to you. But if you're right on the aisle, it'll work. Anyway, does anybody have?
We have some note cards that Stephanie and Cappy are passing around. Does anybody out there want a note card?
Why do they need note cards?
Question? Well,
how do you do these things?
Do you want us to have them yell it out?
Okay. Do they speak English?
Yes.
Because they've been laughing pretty hard.
Okay.
Okay, just yell your question out.
Yell it out.
Or if you prefer, write it down, and I'll talk to you later. But if you want to hear me answer it right now in real time. Yes, there you are. Go ahead. Yeah, the main inspiration, the thing that made me want to write the book was the Python Challenge, which is such a Florida thing. Like, you're all familiar with the Python? It's just the stupidest, unfathomably stupid thing we do down here, but I love it. We have this Burmese python infestation. They're not supposed to be here. They're an invasive species. They're supposed to be in Burma, wherever the hell that is. And what happened was some people had them as pets, these giant carnivorous constrictor snakes. People had them as pets. Then these people ran out of crack, and they said, "Wait a minute, we're living with a giant snake." So they let them go, and they just love it here. They're like New Yorkers. They have no natural enemies, and they thrive. They thrive in Florida, and so the state came up with this. It's 10 years now we've been doing this. 10 years, and by the way. There's more than 100,000 of them. The lowest estimate is 100,000. It's probably a lot more. It could be 3 or 4 times that number. And every year, the mother pythons lay 100 eggs each, or roughly. So they do this thing where they invite anybody who wants to come down and kill them, although you have to take a short online course. Because you ask anybody, how do you learn to deal with a deadly animal in the wild? A short online course. It's the way to go. And then they make a big deal out of it, and then they announce the results, and every year it's like 223 pythons, that's like 3 mother pythons lay more than that, and so the pythons are winning. They're killing us. We should have challenged an animal we could defeat, like the manatees. We could beat them if we. No, I'm not saying we should, but we'd have a chance against the manatees. Anyway.
Okay, I have a couple more here, Dave.
Did you write them?
No.
Okay.
No, someone out there wrote. Who is your favorite writer, and are you ever not funny?
Okay, I love Carl Hyacin, good friend of mine. You should have him come over here sometime. Talk. Very funny guy. The author that I patterned myself after, though, was Robert Benchley, who, like, old people know who Robert Benchley is. He was brilliant guy. Wrote for the New Yorker and Life and the Algonquin Round Table. I loved him when I was a kid. My dad was a fan, so he had all his books. One day, like I'm like 9 or 10, I started reading this and I just couldn't believe that a grown-up wrote this. You know, just funny and weird and silly. It was mostly silly, and but he was a really smart guy. But anyway, that was the author I most liked. Am I ever not funny? Yes, all the time. Like, people think, you know, like, if you were like a magician, presumably you do not go around the house pulling quarters out of. And if you're like, I like to think I'm a funny guy, you know, but then I'll make a joke if one comes. But I'm not like going around being funny. If I'm in Publix and I'm like trying to decide what size Wheatie box to get, people will. This happens to me all the time. Will come up and look at me. I know the look. It's like, and they go, "Are you going to write a column about this?" Like, no, it's Wheaties, you know. So no, not all the time, but you know, I think I would be so annoying if I tried to be funny all the time. So I don't.
Well,
I'll stop right now if you want.
Here's one more.
I can quit any time.
What is your source for dialogue in Swamp Story?
Oh, thank you for asking a question. I really pay a lot of attention to dialogue. I think it's the most fun thing to write. If you listen to how people actually speak in the real world, it is so different from the way often they are depicted in books and many TV shows. And like, it's my kind of a complaint I've always had about fiction, is people don't sound like the way people sound. This is why I loved Elmore Leonard. Dutch was just brilliant at that, where you don't finish a lot of sentences or start in the middle, or you leave words out that are actually pretty important. You have to figure out what they meant. We do that all the time when we speak, but in books, very often people write in complete sentences and in paragraphs. And there was a time when that was kind of like, I guess, the accepted literary mode. But I think in modern fiction, boy, do I sound boring up here. Like, I'm going to fall asleep answering this question. Anyway, so I try to listen to how people speak is the answer to the question.
Yeah, it's all about listening, right, Dave?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So does
Thank
anyone
you for
else?
summarizing my. Yeah. Yes. Arg, talk like a pirate, are you? Well, Talk Like a Pirate Day. I was looking for a column once, and I got a letter from two guys who lived in Oregon, and they said they were playing racquetball one day, and they decided there should be a day when everybody talks like a pirate, and they decided it should be September 19th, and you probably already know this is because one of their ex-wives' birthday was September 19th. So I wrote a column. I mean, I thought that was, they've been doing it for like a couple of years, and they said it hadn't really caught on in Oregon. So I wrote a column about everybody should talk like a pirate on September 19th. And I really didn't, this is like almost 30 years ago, and I didn't think anything of it. And then the day after that column ran, this is back when we had voicemail, and my voicemail was 400 messages all going, because that's kind of, really, when you think about it, it's the only thing anybody knows how to say, like a pirate, which is why there probably aren't any pirates around anymore. They couldn't really communicate. But it just took off. It took off, and it's still going. It's still going. And in fact, I tell everybody, my lasting contribution to culture is going to be Talk Like a Pirate Day, and it wasn't even my idea. I just wrote a column about it. Yeah. Yeah, I keep trying to quit, but people like it. And it's okay. I know I can't. No, but it really is. It's so much work. You know, you don't help. You're like the little red hen. That's what I feel like. But it's a lot of work. And the problem with it is like people always say the same thing to me. Boy, you got a lot of material to work with this year. And it's like, yeah, but it's all bad. Everything that happened is terrible. I have to make jokes out of it, you know. So I do it because people like it so much that I can't stop doing it. So I will keep going. You're welcome. Are we done?
Dave, thank you so much, Dave. Thanks for making us laugh.
My pleasure. Thank you all. And just so you know, I'm on the record here. If I do win the presidency, you can all be in the cabinet. Thank you.
All right.